An Israeli court has just sentenced a Palestinian woman from East Jerusalem to 30 months in prison after she admitted to working with Lebanon's Hezbollah militant group over the course of several years. Now, Yasmin Jaber was convicted after she revealed that she'd been recruited by two Hezbollah agents on social media back in 2015 and had maintained contact with the group's operatives ever since. In fact, she even met up with them in Lebanon and in Turkey several different times and was asked to recruit others here in East Jerusalem. Well, Israel views Hezbollah as one of its most immediate military threats, and the Iranian proxy group has vastly expanded its arsenal of rockets. It's now believed to be able to strike virtually anywhere here in Israel. Joining us now to break this down is Dr. Emmanuel Navon. He's a senior fellow at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. So, Yasmin Jaber was convicted to 2.5 years in prison, 2.5 years in prison. How do you assess this sentence?
Well, I think it's a light sentence considering the fact that Hezbollah constitutes a serious military threat to Israel with its alliance with Iran, and its 150,000 missiles are also directed at Israel. And of course, the purpose of such a sentence is not only to punish intelligence with the enemy in time of war, but also to deter other potential collaborators, and I doubt that this sentence will create any deterrence at all.
So, the Shin Bet said that she was recruited back in 2015, but prior to that, she had no record of any terror activities. Has she shown any remorse for what she was doing?
So Yasmin Jaber took responsibility for her actions as part of a plea bargain. She sort of expressed remorse in order to get a lighter sentence, but of course, one is entitled to doubt whether she has actual remorse for her actions.
How does Hezbollah specifically recruit people within Israel, within the Palestinian territories, to work with the organization? How does one become involved with these terrorists?
So Hezbollah works very hard, actually, on trying to recruit Israeli Arabs because they can fly freely out of Israel and back. They can reach Istanbul in Turkey within a couple of hours, and this is generally where meetings with Hezbollah representatives take place. So the fact that they have Israeli citizenship and that they can fly freely and reach Istanbul very quickly is in fact the main way for Hezbollah to recruit Israeli Arabs.
Now, how often does Israel come across cases just like this, where we see that Hezbollah has successfully recruited somebody living within Israeli territory? Is this a very common occurrence?
So one famous precedent is Azmi Bishara, a former member of Knesset, who has been accused by Israel's secret services of spying for Hezbollah during the Second Lebanon War in 2006. Now, Azmi Bishara fled Israel for Qatar and never stood trial, but this is definitely the most famous precedent.
Now, my question for you is really about the larger Palestinian public. I'd like to understand how the Palestinian population views Hezbollah as an organization and how Palestinian leadership also views the terror group. Is it a supported organization?
So we got the answer to that question back in July 2000 by Yasser Arafat himself when the peace summit at Camp David in July 2000 failed. In fact, this summit took place a couple of months after the IDF's unilateral withdrawal from southern Lebanon. And Arafat himself said that during the Camp David summit, why should I negotiate with Israel when I can just replicate the Hezbollah model, where Hezbollah was able to drive out the IDF from South Lebanon? Maybe I can do the same from the West Bank and Gaza. And many historians and experts actually blame Israel's unilateral withdrawal from South Lebanon under the pressure of Hezbollah for the failure of the Camp David summit. So many Palestinians actually view Hezbollah as much more efficient than the PLO in fighting Israel.
Now, You know, you touched on this before, I think, in your first answer to me, that you felt that this sentence that Yasmin Jabel was receiving was not going to be successful in basically deterring future acts of terrorism like this, or collaboration with organizations like Hezbollah. She's going to be out in 30 months. That's 2.5 years. How can Israeli security services be sure that she's not going to continue this work? How do they monitor people who have been caught in situations like this?
Well, obviously, the Israeli intelligence is going to monitor her acts, her activities on social media after her release. Obviously, one of the most efficient ways for Israel's security services to monitor those kind of activities is the social media, where potential recruits interact and express their views. Obviously, any written commitment from this person after her release will be mostly worthless, and therefore the Israel Secret Services will have to monitor very closely her activities, not only of hers, but also of other residents of East Jerusalem and the West Bank, to make sure that such occurrences don't happen again.
Was she able to successfully recruit other people for the organization? Is there any intelligence about that has been released?
So, to the best of my knowledge, no such information has been released. But as I said before, Hezbollah is very active in trying to recruit mostly Israeli Arabs, because, as I said before, they can travel easily from Ben Gurion Airport to Istanbul in Turkey. And this is obviously part of the struggle between Hezbollah and Israel. It's not only the fact that Hezbollah, as I said before, is an ally of Iran and has about 150,000 missiles directed at Israel. It's also that Hezbollah is trying to gather intelligence inside Israel by recruiting such people.